Sometimes I think about my grandpa on Sundays. We used to ride together to church a lot, and I'd go early with him, and I'd go on Sunday night with him. We do all that stuff together. And I sometimes think about all the time we spent in his little red truck going back and forth together to church. And I think about some of the stories he used to tell. My grandpa would tell some of the biggest lies you ever heard in your life. Right? Like, well, he called them stories. Like, you know the type I'm talking about. Like, my man literally created or invented everything. That's at least if you believed him for what he was saying. So he would do things like, I would walk in with a cheeseburger, and I'd start to take a bite, and he goes, oh, is that Whataburger? I go, yeah, it sure is. He goes, I invented those cheeseburgers over there. I came up with those. I'm like, come on, man. I remember as a kid, 4 or 5 years old, I'd have a new toy, and maybe like a race car or something. He goes, I made that. That was his favorite thing to say, I made that. And even at 5 or 6 years old, you're going, no way, come on, man. What are you talking about? They always say the manufacturer was Mattel or something. Like, it wasn't you. It wasn't Billy Plant, all right? We know it wasn't you. But he would always spin these yarns about how he had made that thing or he had done this. And he would tell these stories about being out at the family farm. And he'd try to tell ghost stories, and they always had the same voice. And we'd be, like, I'd stay on a little army cot in their bedroom. And he would tell me this story before bed because he was that kind of grandpa. And he'd be like, Josh, where are you? And I'm like, that's some serious vibrato you've got there. Some serious stuff. Josh. All the time he would do this to me. Well, as I grew up, as I got a little older, I liked to tell stories too. Now, because I knew my grandfather wasn't lying to me, but that he was just telling stories. You know what I mean? There's kind of a difference. And so I liked to tell stories too, except my stories kind of turned into lies sometimes. I remember being in kindergarten. Now, in kindergarten, I wasn't the most well-behaved kid. I kind of had this issue. Back then, they kind of labeled it officially as annoying brat. You know what I mean? Like, I was that kid. I was that kid in kindergarten, just a punk little kid. And I was always in the office. I was on a first-name basis with the principal and the vice principal. All of them knew who I was. I was that bad little kid in Mrs. Hastings' class. Like, that was me. I went to the office on the first day of school ever for me. Like, I was that kid. Got the referrals in triplicate. You had to take them home, all that sort of thing. That is who stands before you today. Like, I was that guy. I was also, as a result, on a first-name basis with the school counselor. We had this school counselor, and they thought there was potentially something really wrong with me. So they were always sending me over to the school counselor to figure out what it was. And so one day she's asking me questions. I'd done something wrong, bad, you name it. And she's asking me, hey, what's going on? Is things going on at home? Everything all right at home? I take this as my opportunity to invent an after-school special right there in her office. You remember the after-school specials from back in the day? Like, all right. So if you don't know about after-school specials, they were these usually not very long, kind of short, little after-school things that said, hey, if this is going on in your life, don't turn to gangs, don't do drugs, that sort of thing. Don't trust strangers, all of those things. So she's asking me, everything all right at home? I'm like, no, I'm just mad all the time. Keep in mind, I'm 6 years old, and I'm looking at this lady with just like dead stare. Okay, there's no smiles cracking, nothing like that. Kind of a sociopathic thing to do. I get it, right? But I'm just telling her. I'm like, yeah, not going really well at home. Oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And without cracking a smile, I go, well, my stepmom is really mean to me, and she just doesn't like me as much as her son. She goes, you have a stepmom? Yes. No, I did not. And so I just keep going. She's believing me. And so I'm like, okay, let's keep telling this story. This is going to be great. And so I say, yeah, she's really mean to me. She's always making me do all the chores. I never get to pick what I want to eat. She's not very nice. She spanks me. And she goes, oh, really? Your stepmom? I said, yeah, what happened to your mom? Is she still around? I said, no, my mom died. I know. My mom died. And, my dad got remarried, and this lady's just not super kind. and I don't like her. And she goes, oh, okay, and that's why I act so bad at school. She goes, oh, yeah, this lady's eating it up. Well, unbeknownst to me, after I leave, she calls my stepmom at work and says, hi, this is the school counselor, and I'm calling to talk to Josh Plant's stepmother. And my mom says, oh, well, this is his mom, but I'd like to hear more about the stepmother, please. And they figure out what all is going on. So my mom gets me later. You know, there's a point where it crosses from a story to an all-out lie, isn't it? And sometimes the line is blurry. I think the line between a story that you can tell and you can make fun, right, and an actual lie, well, it can be blurry, but usually the line is defined like this. A lie breaks things. Right? If you want to know if you're telling a lie or just telling a story to mess with somebody or something like that, a lie breaks things. Because you could go one of two ways. You could be super legalistic about this and say, you never tell a mistruth ever. You never mess with a person. You never kind of lead them on. To be honest with you, I really like doing that still in my life. I like playing jokes on people and messing with them. But if we say you can't tell a mistruth ever for any reason whatsoever, you can't mess with anybody, right? You can't talk about this or that, well, then there's no lying and there's no practical joking. There's none of that stuff happening for you. On the other hand, you could do all of those things and just understand that when you tell a lie, you're breaking things. You're breaking trust with somebody, or more often, you're breaking the relationship with that person. You ever think about it that way? When you tell a lie to somebody, you break that relationship. You're diminishing them as a person. You're removing their agency to decide whether or not they're going to trust you or they should trust you or to make their own decisions about things. You break that relationship. This is one of the big rules in our house. We don't have a whole bunch of rules we got to hand down all the time, but this is one of the big rules. Do not lie. Do not lie. Because when you do, you break the relationship you have with that other person, or you break the trust with that other person. I figured out I had been saying that too much about a year ago, and Sawyer, our oldest, she didn't lie, but she didn't tell the entire truth. And she was tore out of the frame because she thought she had broken the relationship with her daddy. There's got to be a level of grace there, right? Got to teach it correctly. But I didn't want her to be upset, but I was actually kind of happy that she realized the severity of lying to another person. Because when you lie, you break that relationship. You break that trust. If you've ever been lied to by somebody that you trusted, you know what I'm talking about. It hurts. It hurts deep. If you've ever been lied about, you know it also hurts, doesn't it? When you've been lied about, it hurts so much that it eventually turns into resentment and anger. If you want to know something about me, lying is something I can't stand. I don't like it. If you lie to me or about me, I hate that. I'm not a fan of that at all. And it takes me a while to get to where I can trust you again. And I think, in general, most people are built that way, are wired that way. When it comes to lying, it's one of those do's and don'ts. We've been in a series all summer called Do's and Don'ts. It's one of these do's and don'ts we look at in the Bible and we go, yeah, that's in there. I know that. That's from the Ten Commandments. Or I know you're not supposed to lie. And then we start quoting Revelations, right? And my friend Anna and I were playing this song earlier this week. Like, there used to be a song you'd sing in church. Revelation. Anybody know it? I never remember the verse, but we're just going to make one up. 21:8? Revelations 21:8. So it goes, Revelations 21:8, 21:8. Liars burn in hell, liars burn in hell. Burn, 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 burn. They should have told me that before I went to the school counselor's office. Yeah. Talk about the love of Jesus, then burn, 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 right? No, man. But we know this to be true. The do's and don'ts of everything. We know that in our world, most people grow up saying, you shouldn't lie. Our parents, our grandparents, whoever our caregiver is, says, you should not lie. If they don't teach us, the schools teach us, society at large teaches us, you should not lie. And most societies that have ever existed also stick with this. You should not lie. This is one that we all seem to know is wrong. And honestly, it's practical. Because if people are lying to you, you can't trust them. Right? If you feel like you can't trust the people who live next door to you or live across the street from you or that you work with or that you go to church with or that you participate in Little League games with or whatever it is, if you feel like you can't trust that person, things start to disintegrate. Things start to fall apart. And for a society as a whole not to be able to trust each other, that's when we see things start to get a little chaotic and crazy. And to level with you, I think that's what we're seeing a lot in America right now. We've been lied to by so many people in our lives, people who are around us all the time and people who are in massive positions of authority. We see this over and over again. We don't know who to trust anymore. We live in an era where somebody can fake a video and it looks just like it's me talking, but it's not me talking. They just figured out how to do what they call a deep fake video. We live in an era where you can't always trust what you see on the internet. Headlines are misleading. Politicians say one thing, then they do something else. They do this one thing, and then they say something else, and then they go back and do the other thing that they did the first time. We see churches that sweep all sorts of stuff under the rug. We see pastors lying about where they get money and how they use it. We don't even know who to trust anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons we see our society getting really chaotic and really angry at each other. And it's in the middle of all of that I think that we as Christians, we as followers of Jesus, and we in particular in this church family have an opportunity to set the tone for trustworthiness. I think that we can look at it and we could bemoan what's happened to the church in America and we could just throw ourselves a little pity party, or we could do something constructive. We could be people who set the tone for what it means to be trustworthy. We can show people what it looks like to be trustworthy and why we're able to be trusted. I'd rather take that option any day of the week. Because as Jesus followers, that's our job. That's our job. The first Christians knew about all of this don't lie stuff. They knew all about it. They had this common cultural baggage. Most of them, if not all of them at first, were Jewish. And one of the things that they had in their cultural heritage was this command given to the people of Israel. It was this one: you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Now, if I would have asked you a second ago, hey, is you shall not lie one of the 10 commandments? Probably 95% of us would have said yes. But it's actually this: you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Now, this isn't exactly the same thing as lying, although lying is included there. This is more about perjury. It's about perjury in a court setting. It could include like telling somebody a lie about your neighbor outside of court, of course, but really this is mostly about perjury. Now, remember, the people of Israel had been given this command. This is one of 10 commands that the people of Israel had been given by God so that they could begin to exist as a unified people in the land that God was giving them. They had been slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years. Well, when you're slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years, you're trying to figure out who's in charge, what rules do we follow? So God shows up, brings them out of Egypt and says, I'm God, I'm in charge, and here are the things that are going to make you different than all the people around you. Here are the things that are going to make you my special, chosen, holy people. I want you to follow these rules. And one of them was, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Again, very practical. Because in a fledgling society, as you're trying to figure these things out, you don't want people lying to each other. You certainly don't want them undermining the court system. Because in an era when there's no cameras, there's no DNA evidence, there is no CSI Jerusalem going on all the time, when the forensic stuff doesn't happen, you have to rely on eyewitness testimony. And it was such a big deal that most of the time you had to have multiple eyewitnesses to things who could be trusted in a court of law. Now, the penalty for lying and perjuring yourself here, it was severe. It was severe. In fact, if you were to bring a charge against somebody that you knew it was a fabricated thing, you were making it up just because you were trying to get at them, and it was proven that you had fabricated the entire charge, then the punishment you were seeking for that person originally was then visited upon you. It was severe, these penalties. Severe. So you're relying on all this eyewitness testimony. Now, we should be able to say, we would think, hey, that's an easy one to follow. You don't lie about somebody else. You don't give false testimony against somebody else. You don't want society to fall apart because it undermines and doesn't listen to the court system. This is true for us today, right? We need judges in place who are going to hand out and mete out justice in the way it should be. We need attorneys who advocate for their clients and do the right thing and aren't underhanded. We need all of those things because we need to be able to trust our judicial system to hand out things and make things work in society. That's part of what holds us together. It was the same thing in ancient Israel. Now, we might all say, well, I would never lie about somebody like that. I would never perjure myself. But let me suggest something to you. Almost all of us, maybe all of us, are capable of anything given the right circumstances. Let me paint a picture for you. Say you're living 3,000 years ago, and you're there in the land with the people of Israel, and you're having this conversation with a friend, somebody who's very close to you, somebody you like a lot and you love a lot. They got their quirks, like most people, but you love them a lot, and they do a lot of really great things. But they are really mad at this person who lives on the other side of them. And they say, this person has been stealing my goats. I just know it. They say, well, have you seen him? No, I haven't seen him yet. But I know it's them because I've got this one goat. His name's Skippy. And they took Skippy, and I saw Skippy over at his yard. And I said, hey, Skippy. And Skippy came running to me. And that guy tried to tell me it wasn't Skippy. But it was Skippy. So here's what I need you to do. And they say to you, I need you to do this. I need you to come with me to the judge. And I need you to vouch that we saw this guy stealing Skippy and all my other goats. Well, now you're in a pickle, right? Because you don't want to disappoint your friend. You don't want to hurt your friend. And you also want him to get Skippy back because Skippy's kind of cool. You want him to have all the stuff he needs. And that guy on the other side, you don't really like him too much anyways. So you're willing to go do that. Or maybe not. See, we can all find ourselves in position to bend the rules a little bit. Because chances are that guy's stole the goats and all that stuff. And you're just kind of helping justice along a little bit. But that's not what God is all about. So this isn't exactly the same as you shall not lie. It's more about perjury. This is about legal systems and all of that. But it's still a very serious deal. And it helped keep all of society together. Now, when Jesus showed up, he added a little bit of something to this. Jesus said this has to go a little bit further because perjury is bad in and of itself. But look what Jesus says. He's talking one day, he's teaching in one of his greatest sermons, and he says, again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, the Israelites long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows that you have made. So if you made a vow, if you made an oath, you need to fulfill your commitment there. If not, you're a liar, and you're nothing like the God that you say you serve. He goes on, he says, you shouldn't be making oaths and vows anyways. You shouldn't be doing any of that sort of stuff. Instead, you should be just saying yes or no. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Interesting. See, this isn't exactly the same as him coming out and going, hey, we don't need to do anything with the 9th commandment, right? That's not exactly what's going on here. But Jesus is taking it further than just lying or perjury or anything like that. This is about integrity. What Jesus is saying to his followers is, you need to be the type of person that when you say something, people expect that it's true, that they don't even have to question it. They know that you are trustworthy. That if you say, I'm going to do this, then you're going to do this. If you say this happened, then it absolutely happened. That doesn't mean you're above anybody checking on you. It just means that you live a life that's above reproach. Jesus followers are supposed to be so real and so trusted and so authentic that their word isn't even questioned. It wasn't just about court proceedings. It's about having a high level of integrity. And guess what people with high levels of integrity do? They refuse to lie. They refuse to perjure themselves. But it goes much deeper than just the truth. See, this idea of Jesus people following Jesus and living with high levels of integrity, it used to be the case that people trusted the follower of Jesus. The first Christians, they were known for this. They were known for getting up early in the morning on a Sunday morning, the first day of the week, before they went to work. We're talking 6 a.m. And they would gather together for their little church service. And they would sing these songs to and about Jesus. Roman letters that were written at the time say it this way. They sang these songs and prayed to Jesus as if he were a god. And then they would hear somebody talk. And then at the end, they would all look at each other and they would promise that they weren't going to defraud anyone else. That they weren't going to lie to anyone else. They weren't going to cheat anyone else in business. This was known about the first Christians. They were known for this. Today, we've seen churches and pastors exploit the people who go to their church and use money in terrible ways. We've seen churches sweep sexual abuse under the rug, trying to act like it didn't ever happen so that they could save their own skin. Meanwhile, 2,000 years ago, the first Christians wouldn't recant. They wouldn't recant even under penalty of death. They were being persecuted and brought before Roman magistrates, and the Roman magistrate says, if you'll just burn a little incense in front of this statue here, you don't even have to mean it, but if you'll just burn a little incense in front of this statue right here, like, I'll let you go. And they said, no, never. I'd rather die. How did we get from that to not being trusted in our society? I don't know if you have many friends outside the church. I don't know how many conversations you have with people who aren't part of a church somewhere. Let me tell you something. For many of them, they don't trust you or me if we say we're a Christian. And if somebody walks in here to the church and tells me they're a Christian plumber, or a Christian electrician, or a Christian this or that, to be honest with you, I kind of get my guard up. The name of Jesus has been used improperly here. We haven't represented him well over the last however many years. But now is the time that we can change it back. We got to act like the early Christians did. But the first thing we have to understand is lying is incompatible with following Jesus. Lying is incompatible with following Jesus. Let me say it better. Low integrity is incompatible with following Jesus. You can't be a low integrity person and follow Jesus and say you follow Jesus. You can't do it. You have to be high integrity. That means you're doing what's right. You're doing what you're supposed to do. The first Christians, they talked to each other and they said it like this: do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices. Your old self. Not just, hey, don't lie to each other. That's part of the old you, man. That's the old, you don't have that anymore. That's gone. Instead, you have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. The new self is made in the image of your creator. So that as you're this new person, being made more and more into the image of your creator, you don't lie because God doesn't lie. You don't do illegal things because God doesn't do illegal things. You're not a monster because God's not a monster. You are loving because God is loving. You are gracious because God is gracious. You are good because God is good. You are kind because God is kind. You see where I'm going with this? You're made in His image. That other stuff, that's the old self, man. Leave it alone. Don't return to it. Leave it there. Go to the new. Go to the new. Be like Jesus. See, the thing that sometimes gets forgotten is that living a life of integrity keeps you from doing things like lying. If you're living a life of integrity, you have no reason to lie. It's a practice that we do. In every moment, I'm doing everything I can to be a person of high integrity. There's always a moment. There's always a reason. There's always a reason why, a justification we could make for why I told that lie, or why I exaggerated the truth, or why I did that thing. But if you're a person of high integrity, you're stamping that out from the get-go. Here's what I want you to remember. Here's how the early Christians lived and how I want us to live. Live in a way people trust what you say. That's what it comes down to. Live in a way people trust what you say. Very specifically, they should be able to trust what you say about Jesus. But if they can't trust that you're going to pay your bills on time, like you said you would, if they can't trust that you're going to be in the place that you said you're going to be, if they can't trust that you're going to show up to work on time because you said you would, how are they ever going to hear you talk about the God of the universe and take you seriously? If you can't be a kind person to the people you don't like at work, how are they ever going to believe you when you say God is love? How are they ever going to take that seriously? They're not. They're just not. So we have a lot of people, a whole generation of people who've watched church members and people who went to church live as if they didn't really believe in the God of the universe, didn't really believe that Jesus had done this incredible new thing. And then the people that they watched turned around and said, well, why don't you guys believe us? Friends, we have to live in a way people trust what we say. It starts there. And that's being a person of high integrity. So let me ask you, are you a person of high integrity? Are you someone who could be trusted? Now, you want to say yes, but let's ask it this way. Would the people around you answer the same way? Would they answer the same way? They say, yep, Josh is a high integrity person. When he says he's going to do this, I trust it's going to get done. Or would they hedge their bets a little bit? Well, he's a nice guy, but, sometimes he says he'll get it done, and you got to remind him 3 or 4 times. It takes an extra month or 2. Some of y'all at work, you wonder why you haven't been rising through the ranks. Maybe it's because you're not a high integrity person. Maybe that's what it is. Some of y'all, you wonder maybe why your grandkids or your kids don't want to do the whole church thing. Maybe it's because they saw a lot of low integrity people filling those pews when they were younger. I want to ask you, are you a high integrity person? Are you someone who's being made into the image of Jesus? Or are you running back to that old self and trying to put it on instead? When we talk about high integrity, there's 3 things that I want you to think about. There's 3 little areas that I want you to focus on. The first is tell the truth. Tell the truth. Again, I'm not being legalistic about this and saying you can't, mess with people every once in a while. I am saying that when you lie, you break a relationship. That's the line. When you lie, you're breaking relationship, you're breaking trust. Tell the truth, even when it's hard. Even when you're the one who looks bad in the end. Tell the truth. Second is this. Fulfill your commitments. If you commit to do something, do it. Don't be a person who says, yeah, I'll do that, and then bail. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't even fulfill your commitments, people won't trust you. and they won't trust what you have to say about Jesus. Third thing is this: do what is right. Just do what's right. That's what I love about Frozen, right? Frozen 2, I think. They don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in this. And there's this line: just do the next right thing. That's so good. Just do the next right thing. Do what's right. You know what it is. And if you don't, call me. I'll tell you. Just do what's right, what you know. Do your best on that. And then trust God with the rest. You do these three things, I think that you'll be a high integrity person. And if you're a high integrity person, you have more of an opportunity to reach people with the good news about Jesus and what he's done in this world. You've been given an opportunity and a chance to live in a way that so many people pass up. You've been given the opportunity to find this new way to be human, that to be part of this world that God is breaking from eternity and into time and space with. You've been given the opportunity to lead the charge on that and then to invite other people into it. Why would you waste that opportunity because you don't want to tell the truth, or because you don't want to fulfill your commitments, or because you don't want to do what's right? There's too much riding on it. God wants to use you, but you won't be used if you can't be a high integrity person. Would you let me pray for you? Lord, I thank you for today, and I thank you that you brought us all here together. I thank you that you gave us the prime example, Jesus, of what it means to be high integrity. And I thank you that you expanded the commandment about perjury to include all these areas of our life where we need to match up to who you are. I pray, God, give us that strength, give us that courage. Help us to be honest with ourselves and honest with others. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I think about what we tell our kids, some of these exact same things that Josh talked about today. But if you're here and today's message reached you and you want to take your next steps with this church and with your relationship with Jesus, take a minute, send the word NEXT to 407-753-9656. Now, you may also be in the need of prayer. If you want to talk to somebody, members of our prayer team are going to be in the back to speak with you. Talk to them. They'd love to hear from you, love to meet you. Now, the challenge that we're placing for you all for next week: ask someone that you trust if you're a person of high integrity. Sometimes it's a little hard to hear, but do it, because we are. That's what God calls us to be. Final thing, next week is, drum roll please, 90s Sunday. Yeah, I want to see hammer pants. I want to see Ice Ice Baby t-shirts. I want to see fanny packs, hyper-colored